Hilchas Mechirah Perek Chamishasa. So we're learning the dinim of Eino, that Eino is if it was exactly a shtos, so then you're machzir the Eino. If it was pachas mishtos, we assume it's Mechila. And if it's yes mishtos, then it's a mekach tois. In other words, the one that was nisana could claim that he wants it should be considered a mekach tois. Now, b'medvar and mamurim, when we're dealing with Eino as far as the value of the item is concerned, either the meicher overcharged the lekeach, or the lekeach bought the item for less than was really worth. It was so memela the meicher was nisana. Masha'inkin, if the Eino was not as far as the value is concerned, but as far as the volume is concerned, or how many pieces they made up, or the size of the item, or the weight of the item, so that's not Eino, that's pasha mistake, and that's le'elam chayzer. That's what we're learning here. Perek chamishasa. Hameichel lechaveri b'mida b'mishkol b'minyan. They made up a size, they made up a weight, or they made up an amount. And v'tov b'kolsho, and there was a mistake as far as either the size, or the weight, or the amount, or the number of things that he's giving. So it's chayzer le'elam. So over here you could always be chayzer. And chayzer over here doesn't mean that it's a mekach tois, but rather chayzer le'elam means that you always have to return that whatever was missing. She'ein hinoya ela b'daman. The whole musig of Eino that we learned that there's a mitzvah of mechila or mekach tois, that's talking about bedam. Avul becheshben, as far as cheshben is concerned, is chayzer. Chayzer means that you have to return the item that was missing. Ketza. Machrele meya egezim bedinner. They made up a price that I'm going to give you 100 egezim for a dinner. And lepel v'nimtzu meya ve'echad etishim v'tisha. Either he gave him less the amount of egezim that he was supposed to give him, or he gave him an extra egez. Is nikna mekah, so the sale is a good sale. Whoever, in other words, whoever has that extra egez should give it back. If the moicher gave less, so the moicher has to give the extra egez, and if the likeh got 101, so he has to give back that extra egez. So that's talking about if there was a mistake in the item, that he gave him an extra item or he gave him less an item. The same thing would be if there was a mistake in the amount of money. Either the buyer gave the seller an extra coin, or he gave him less a coin. Is again the din is chayzer vafilu la'achar shekanu miyadi. Even if they made a kinyan amongst themselves later, shalei nishalei eitzel chaveri klum. I'm not sure what kind of kinyan this is. In other words, a person makes a proclamation. Reuven makes a proclamation that I have no tefiyas on Shimon, and Shimon makes a proclamation that Shimon has no tefiyas on Reuven. And there was some Maisa Kinyan. Pashtas is like a Maisa Kinyan, which is only showing the Ehrenskeit of this proclamation. Like we learned before, that the Rambam said many things which there's be'emes not shaychus really a Maisa Kinyan, but on the other end, the Maisa Kinyan is only to show the Ehrenskeit of the statements. Over here also, there's no Kinyan that I have. It's a Hidah. There's no Kinyan in this Hidah. But in order to be mechazik this Eidah, I'm making a kinyan that I don't have any tinus on you, and you're making a kinyan that you have no tinus on me. Is nevertheless lepel, if we realize that I gave you an extra coin, or you gave me an extra coin, or I gave you an extra egez, you gave me an extra egez, is chayzer shekinyan b'doisu, because this kinyan is a kinyan b'tois. V'chein kol kiyetzim. Is because the nekudas advarim is together of a noise when there's a discrepancy in price. When there's a discrepancy in price, so then there's an issue of how much this discrepancy is. Masha'inkin, if in size or in value or in weight, so that's a different get. I'm not delivering what I was supposed to deliver. Or lepel, I took more than I should have taken. So over here, the whole din of Eino doesn't apply, and memela, it's always you have to return the item that either is owed or that was taken too much. V'chein, Halacha Gimel v'chein hameichel lechaveri karka eved be'ema yishar metaltalin, and now is v'nimtza b'mekach mum. It's the same idea. I bought an item for you, and now we realize that there's some type of a blemish in the item. Sheliyad be'elikech, that the likech wasn't aware of. So the din is machzire, so he can return the item. V'afilu la'achar kamashonim. Because again, this doesn't go into together with the oino. Oino means I overpriced or underpriced. Masha'inkin over here, I gave you an item which is not the item which we made up. Shezem mekach toisu. And then v'hu, when do we say that a person, the buyer, could go ahead and return the item because it's a mekach tois? That's only shlish tamish b'mekach hachar sheyadamum. If the buyer didn't use the item after he was aware of the blemish. If the mum aval nishtamish be'achar mum, if he knew about the mum and still he kept on using the item, is hareze mochel. So we interpret this ishtamshus of the buyer as a mechila for this mekach toys, memela ve'eni yochel lahauzu, so he can't return the item. Halacha dalet, ein mechashvim pchasamum. In other words, the value of how much the mum causes it to depreciate from its original value is not really relevant. Afilu machale keli shava asoradinim, and lepel v'nimtze b'mum hamavchis midomi isa, which is a very minimal amount, is in lechur it's much less than a shtus. Nevertheless, machzir sakeli, he could return the keli. The buyer could return the keli. Ve'ena yochel le'malei, and he can't tell him helech isa pchasamum. Here's back an iser for the pchasamum. And as I sold you the item, and the item had a mum, and because of the mum, it's worth an iser less. So I'll give you that iser. That doesn't help. Shalikeach, because the lekeach could claim bechayfetz shalom aniretza. I want a full item. The fact that you're going to give me the iser is not going to help me. The other way also. Imrotza lekeach likach pchasamum. The lekeach tells to the meicher, listen, you gave me an item. The item has a mum. Now the mum causes it to be worth less. So therefore, I want you to give me the money, that extra money. In other words, I bought an item, let's say, as we said over here, that it was worth asoradin. In Lepel, it's worth less. So Memela, I want you to pay me back that less that it's worth. So the din is, now, Harishus biyad ha-mecher, the mecher has the option to shoemalei. Oy tikna isa k'meshahu, ei tuldam mishal chavalech. In other words, you don't have a right to ask for the money. The lekeach has a right to say it's a mekach tois, but he doesn't have a right to ask for the money. So in other words, when a person, Marshall, sells for an item for more than its value, l'chatchila, they made up the item. This item is really more than its value. So then we say you have a right to come and ask for the money back. In other words, if it's a sixth, you could ask for the money back. Masha'en Kain, over here, we're talking about be'emes, you don't have a right. In other words, over here, we're talking about be'emes, you have a right to say it's a mekach tois. Because it's lepel, it's a mum. Now, if you don't want to exercise that right to say it's a mekach tois, so you don't have the ability to exercise another right and say, I want the money back, even if it's a six, bepashtas. The pashtas, even if it's a six. So let's say if it would have been overpriced, you would have been able to ask the money back. But over here, since it's the item, and the problem over here is that it's a mum, so mainly you have either the right to say that it's a mum, and mainly you want a mekach tois, or you don't have a right at all. So the mecher could turn back to the lekeach and say, either you take the item as is, or give me back the item, and I'll give you back the entire price of the item. Halacha hey. So what's considered a mum? So kol she'iskimu of bnei medina shehu mum she'machzeh be'mekach zeh. That has to be an upmach of the bnei medina. Whereas the bnei medina make up what's considered a mum that you could have charata for, and memela you could say mekach tois, and what's considered a mum that you can't have charata and you can't tie a mekach tois. Is kol she'iskimu of bnei medina shehu mum she'machzeh be'mekach zeh. Is machzir, and then you could be machzir. V'chol she'iskimu lo she'ein a mum. If the bnei medina were masking that that's not considered a mum, is a reza ein a machzir bei. El in pirish, unless the lekeach specified, and he said clearly, I don't want to have any blemish, even those blemishes that people don't consider a blemish. I don't want to have any blemish at all. Shekol anesiv and stam is al minig an dino usemich. Normally, when a person buys something, we assume he's being semich al minig an medina. So therefore, since the minig an medina is that it is a mum or it's not a mum, so that will decide whether or not he could tie a mekach tois unless he specifies. Halacha vov kol lekeach stam is ena lekeach ela hadavar mish hashol mikol mum. Normally, when a person buys something, we assume he wants something that's sholi mikol mum. And what's considered sholi mikol mum? Something that the ansheir considered that it's something that's a mum. So that would be something that he could be chayzer on, and something that the Anshe Medina consider not a mum, he can't be chayzer on. That's his stam das. Now, when Pirish HaMechiv Omer, Amana she'enat chayzer alai b'mum, so l'chura there would be a svara, since he made clear Amanas she'enat chayzer alai b'mum, so maybe he was mechel. So the din is no, harei chayzer. Nevertheless, he's chayzer. Ad she'yifarish hamum she'yesh b'mkori, unless the moicher specifies the mum that there is in this sale, and v'yimchal al-lekech, and then the lekech should be mechel, or atsheyemolei, he doesn't have to specify the mum. He could also specify how much the price is going to go down as a result of the mum. Atsheyemolei kol mum sheyimotzi b'mekach zeh hapech is dom of ad kach v'kach kibalti esek. So if the lekech specified the price range of how much he's willing to be mavater on a mum, so that's also considered enough mechila. Why? Shahamechel, this is tzarich leida hadavar shimchul beich. In order for a mechila to be chal, it has to be that you know what you're being mechel. And v'yifarish say you should teach us what you're being mechel. Kimei amefarish beinoya. Just like when a person says al menashe ein lecha alayino, that's not considered a mechila. It has to be like we learned before that in order to it has to be how much it's really worth. I'm coming. The Mechirah is telling the lekech, listen, I know this item is worth 100, and I'm selling it for 200. So he's specifying the ino. So al derech over here, when a person comes along and says, I'm selling you an item, you should know, I want you to be moichel any mum that it may have. And the lekech agrees, so that's not considered, that's not considered a mechila. Because lepel, the lekech has a right to mona mekachtois. And the fact that he was moichel without knowing what he was being moichel is not considered a mechila. However, if he knows, the Mechirah tells him, listen, I'm selling you this item, and this item has this and this mum. And normally people are makbid about this mum, but I'm telling you about this mum. Or I'm telling you, I want you to be moichel, or the lekeach says, I'll be moichel any mum that's going to go to a certain price. I'm buying an item for $100, and I'm saying I'm willing, if the pale, this mum is only going to cause it to go down in price by $20, I'm willing to take it. So again, I've made very clear what my mechila is. So then the mechila works. Masha'inkin, to make a regular mechila, says, I'm buying the item, I don't care, it doesn't make a difference to me how much it's really worth. Or it doesn't make a difference to me what kind of mum it has. So since he doesn't really know what he's being mechil, so that mechil is not considered a mechil. Halacha zayin, hamechir para lechaveri, and then umana be monim gluyim mum shein gluyim. He started telling him all kinds of mum that this para really has. That the mecher mostly started telling the buyer the mum that this para has. Now v'leihaye ba me'esin hamumin hagluyim shemana, and v'nimtze ba me'esin mum shein gluyim. Whereas he mentioned a number of mumen which l'churi you should be able to see, and then he mentioned mumen which you cannot see. Now the mumen which you could see in reality weren't there, and from the mumen that you cannot see were there. So the din is hareze mekach tois v'chezer. V'aval pisha pirish amum shenimtza. Even though l'churi the Mechirah specified the mum that the person that the parah actually had, but nevertheless harikeach ema. So the case of the Rambam is going to say a case. In other words, he mentioned the number of mumen which should be apparent. Lepel, he saw that he's mentioning mumen which the parah really doesn't have. Is a marti? He's just tamazi trying to put down his chayra, so I shouldn't be able to have any tinus. But Bams, I'm sure everything that he's saying is not really true. V'har raya, the first part that he said isn't true. So, when I saw the ones that he mentioned that which l'chura should be obvious, should be visible, weren't there, is a marti kach ein elu she'ein shemana. So the ones that he's mentioning, which are not visible, are also not there. The einim mefarish mum elel kedei lashbir daiti. He knows he wants me to feel whatever reason he's trying to tell me that you should know that regardless of what this item is, I want you to buy this item. But he doesn't really think that these mumen are true. V'haraya, he sees that he mentioned mumen, which all the mumen which he mentioned, which could be visible, aren't true. So then we say that he wasn't really meichel. Meichel means that he told him the mum, and he believed him that it has such a mum, and nevertheless he was meichel. Mashengan, if he told him the mum in a way that he shouldn't believe him that it has the mum, so he wasn't really meichel. The Rambam says ketzat parazu iveres. He tells him this par is blind. Chigerasi, it limps. Nashchonasi, it always bites. And Raftzonasi, is always lying down. It doesn't work. And lepel nimtzas Raftzonas buva. So Chigeres and Iveres is visible. You can see. Masha'enke and Nashchonas and Raftzonas is not visible. And lepel, it was nimtzas Raftzonas buva. It was either just a Raftzonas. In Nashchonas, it was a Nashchonas. It was a part that bites. So the din is a mekach tois. Why? Because the buyer thought to himself, you see, he's saying Iveres, he's saying Chigeres, and that's not true. Simstam and Nashchonis and Raftzonis are also not true. Now, Hoye Bakola Mumin Shemona, so that is a mekach tois, because Lepel, the ones that he mentioned that were visible were true, and Memele, he could assume that the ones that he mentioned that weren't visible are also true. V'cheinim Hoyse Chigeres, v'nimtzas Nashchonis, even though if one of the ones that he mentioned, which are visible, knows he said it's an Iveres and a Chigeres. Lepel, it was only a Chigeres, not an Iveres. But at least one of the ones that he mentioned were true, so therefore there's a reason for the buyer to think that the ones that weren't visible are also true. is Afal Pi She'eini Veres is Ein Ze Mekach Tois. Because Lepel, since one of the things that are visible are true, so therefore the Lekeach heard that he also said things that aren't visible. He should have realized that they were also true, or at least possibly true. And Memela, when he's Meichel, so it's considered a real Mechila. Halacha Tes. Herole Hamumin Sheyeshba. He showed him certain mum that the Behema has. And then V'amale Mum Ze Yeshba Mum Pleni Mum Pleni. In other words, it has this mum, which I'm showing you, and it also has other mumen. Now, Afal Pi She'oisa Hamumin Shemona. Now, in the Ram that we have it says Nirin. Afal Pi She'oisa Hamumin Shero. Mona is Nirin. And V'nimtzuba Kulan and Muktzas and Lepel, it had those other mumen, and he mentioned that, is nevertheless Ein Ze Mekach Tois. Now, the question is, what's the Chiddush? What's the Chiddush? In other words, L'chura, he showed him the mum. He showed the mum that Yeshba, and he said it has it. So for that mum, for sure, he was Makabel. Now he says also there's other mumen. And Lepel has the other mumen. So l'chura, and he knows about it. He knows this mum, he knows about it, and he knows the other mumen as well. So what's the chiddush? Aval pi she'eisen mumen. I mean, the way the gear says aval pi she'eisen mumen nirin and v'nimtzu b'kul and mixas and ezemekach is very hard to understand. The l'chura, if it's nirin, so obviously he saw it and he knew about it and he mentioned it. So mele is ezemekach. Now, according to the gear that's aval pi she'eisen mumen ein nirin. Is also you have to understand. In other words, he showed a certain mum, and that he was makabel, and that Lepel he told him about other mumen, which are ein nirin, and Lepel they had it. So l'chura he knew about it. There was no reason for him to assume that we're talking about something that's not true because Lepel he showed him a mum which was there. It's not clear. It's the Mishnah explains that. I don't understand. Let's just say the halacha again, just to know the halacha. Herele hamum sheyeshba. He showed him the mum. V'amalei mum ze yeshba. That's number one. He told him mum ze yeshba. So that's clear. He told him this mum. So this mum he told him about. Then he also told him a mum pleni. Told him about other mumen as well. Is aval pi she'oisna mumen shemona. Either it says nirin or ein nirin. One of the two. I'm not really sure. V'nimtza b'kulon ein mekzason. So the din is ein ze mekach tois. It's not a mekach tois. So l'chura, like what's shver to us, the shver l'chura is to understand is what's the chiddush. L'chura the din we understand. He showed him a mum and he told him about other mumen. The mumen that he showed him was there. He told him about other mumen they were also there. And lepel, so he knew about it. So what's the chiddush? That since he showed the first, because Mishnah says since he showed the first and the other ones he didn't show, so there'd be a svara that there was no real smichas das, that there was a mum. I'm not sure. Halacha yut. V'chein hamoicher shivcha l'chaverim. Now this din that we're learning over here again. The nikud of the din is that when you tell a person about a mum, you tell the buyer about the mum. So if the buyer believes you that there is a mum and nevertheless he accepts it, so then that's considered a mechila. If he doesn't really believe you that there's a mum, so then it's not considered a mechila. V'chein hamecha shivcha l'chaveri v'amale gidemesi chigeresi sumei sheitehi and nichpesi. Nichpesi means she has epilepsy, which is something which is a mum which is not shibigoli. And v'leihoyu ba mumi elu. All those mumen, which is gidemes chigeres, which is something which you could see she didn't have, and lepel that she did have this fact that she was nichpes. So again, so he's thinking to himself, he's telling me all these mumen. I see all the mumen that he's saying aren't true. So he assumed that nichpes is also not true. Because he wasn't really meichel. In other words, you only meichel something that you know about and you believe about it. Masha'enkin, if you meichel something you don't believe in, you don't believe that there's such a mum, so there was no real mechila. Halacha Yudalef, Mikana ni oimer. Sha'moicher chayfs lechaveri b'mei adinim. A person goes and sells someone for b'mei adinim. V'amar le chayfet zeh ein ishava ela zuz echot. In amanash ein lecha layino. So if he didn't specify how much it's worth really, so then for sure saying amanash ein lecha layino doesn't help. But we learned before that if he said, I know this item is worth this and this amount, and lepel, I'm selling you for more than the amount, so then that's considered mechila. But now that the Rambam is saying that mechila is only, in this halachas we're learning, that mechila is only when I really believe that this is the smatchev and meil I'm being meichel. So if you tell me that there is a mum, and I don't really believe that there is a mum, and I'm maskim, so that's not considered a mechila of the mum. So al derez abayino, you tell me, you're selling me for a certain price, and you tell me that the price is really worth less. See, if it's possible that I believe you the price is worth less, and I was meichel, so that's a mechila. But if you tell me like a price which is b'chlal not together, in other words, you're selling me something for 100 dinner, and you're telling me it's really only worth one zuz, shalei be'erech, and I know that it's worth more than a zuz. So Mela, what you're saying is really meaningless. So what you're saying is meaningless, not even together, that to be true. So then my mechila is also not a mechila. Just like in the case over there, when I'm telling you about a mum, and lepel, you don't believe me that there's a mum. So therefore the mechila about the mum is not a mechila. So al derazeh, when you tell me a price and you don't believe me about the price, so the mechila on the price is not a mechila. That's this halach. Halach yudalef. Mikan ani yemer shamecher chayfes lechaveri b'mei adin, and then va'omer lechayfes zeh ein isha ve'elu zuzechad. It's really only worth one zuz. When almanah she'ein lecha layino, so the din is areza yesh lo yolav ino. Shari yemer kiven shari isi. Sha'amar she'ein isha ve'elu zuz. When I see that he's telling me that's only worth a zuz, is yodaitish ein mischav ne'ulash be'er daiti. He's only trying to appease me. He's trying to tell me, listen, it's only worth a zuz. I'm not really sure what lashbiach daiti really means over here. But I'll call upon him, you're saying something which I don't believe is true. Unless he specifies how much there really is, in other words, he's saying, listen, this item I'm selling for 100, in reality it's only worth 50, it's only worth 60, whatever amount, that's something which a person could believe. And nevertheless he's meichel, so that's considered a meichel. So then he knew what he was being meichel. Halacha Yud Beis. Hamecher Eved Yishivcha is ein ha'yelkeach yochel lachzire mipnei mumen she'ein movachten leisem movachte. Those type of mumen which aren't going to have an effect on the Eved's work, you cannot be chayzer because of these mumen. And veheina nikroim simpin, and these are called simpin. In other words, a mum which is not going to affect the Eved's work, which is called a simpin, that's not a grounds for a mekach tois by an Eved. Why? Shema is a simpin goli. If it was a simpin goli kvaro, so he can't tie a mekach tois. He knew about it. If it's something that he didn't know about it, the reason he didn't know about it is because something which is on his body, which is a place which is normally covered by clothes. He can gain shuma bebasa, a certain wart on his flesh, ein shichas kelev, or an ugly scar that came out of a bite of a dog. He has a bad odor coming from his mouth or nose. Is hail these four things: the shuma bebasar, the neshichas hakelev, the reach hapeh, and the reich hachetim, are not something which are going to affect his work. Is any magzer she'enu avodim litash v'shamita el l'mlacha. And since, as far as malacha is concerned, these things aren't mevalvel, so therefore that can't be counted as something which is a mekach toys, because it doesn't affect what you're buying him for. Now, however, nimtze be'shchin raf, he has a bad shchin, oichoyli hamatish eskechi, which causes him to be weak. Eisha yenichpe, is someone that has epilepsy. A meshuma, there's a certain craziness. So the din is hareza mum, mipnei shemevatli mulachti, that causes him to be batli mulacha. V'cheinem nimtze be'tzaras, if he has leprosy. Tzaras, ukiyetze be'midvarim elam beguolim, things which are disgusting. So then hareza mum, why? Mipnei shenafshi shaladim eganisbem, a person feels wants to go away from it. V'nimtza she'enim mis'asikle b'mleches achilu shtia. This Eved, which has tzaras, he's not going to want him to deal with the food or drink that he eats. So he's going to be a problem with his work. In other words, you're buying the Eved and the Shivcha, and he wants him to work things which are connected to food, and because he has the tzaras, so therefore, so it's repulsive. This repulsive. He has something which are repulsive, and he doesn't want him to deal with his food. He was a bandit. Is areza mum amabed skuli. This is a person who goes ahead and does robbery with robbery, armed robbery. So this is a mum which could cause him to completely lose the Eved. Since he's an armed bandit, so therefore the Melech is going to catch him and he's going to kill him. He's going to lose his whole Eved. He was already written down L'malchus, and knows the Melech has him as a reserves for his work. Is areza mum machzirim the Melech will take him for his worth whenever he wants. So in other words, if he's in a situation where he's either going to do something which may cause him to be killed, or he's in a situation where the Melech may go ahead and take him, so that's considered a mum for an Eved. No, as we learned before, there's no ino by avodim, just like there's no ino by karkois. But mum is different. Mum you could have by avodim, you could have by karkois. Avalim ninsa ganef. If he's not found a list of mezuyim, he's found a ganef. A chetev is a gazlan, a person that chaps things. A gain of nefashis, or is a kidnapper. A bereach tamid, or he's someone who's always running away. A zel v'sevi. It's all ukiyetze b'dvarim eilu. Is ein yochel house. These are grounds for a mekach toys by Avid. Why? Shekol avodim b'cheska sheyesh b'em kol adeyas harois. In other words, we could assume when you buy an Eved, you're not expecting the Eved to be a midas mezuchachis. The fact that he's a ganav, and the fact that he's a zel v'seva, and the fact that he's a chetev, all these things are expected in the Eved. Elim came pirish, unless the buyer clearly said, I want to have an Eved which has doesn't have all these things. So then he can tie the mekach toy. So minastam, you don't assume that the Eved doesn't have these things.